Hey everybody, Brandon Steele here for Lootpress. Thanks for joining in with us today. Here with my good friend Capito, gubernatorial candidate for West Virginia, and just happy to be able to sit and have a conversation with him today. And so out on the campaign trail today, we've got about 15 days to go until
About 2 weeks.
yeah. So how's everything feel? Are you enjoying yourself? Are you enjoying the campaign
Oh,
trail?
well, I mean, Brandon, first off, thanks for having me. It's good to be able to sit down with a good friend. We got about 2 weeks, and momentum is awesome right now. We've probably, I don't know what the exact count is, but we're up over 90,000 miles on the campaign trail, crisscrossing the state of West Virginia, and I think you and I both know we have the best people in the world. But boy, oh boy, I can tell you from my travels, isn't that the truth? And there's so many beautiful parts of this state. And all we said when we came into this campaign was we were going to get out in the car every single day and we were going to drive to some place in West Virginia, if not 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, just to listen to people. And I can tell you every single day that we're on this campaign trail, the momentum starts to build. Our vision and our message is resonating with the people of West Virginia. So I feel great about it. And I think the people of the state feel great about it.
You and I served in the House together, when I got to the House, it was kind of interesting. Your cousin was probably the one that helped me the most to get there. But then, when I get there, I sit beside you on the floor.
Yep.
You were there to keep me under control. I think a little bit.
Well, you were playing slide, but I think you knew what you were doing.
So, we've been in the House together for a while, and I guess my first question to you would be, you took a huge leap about a year and a half ago when you came out and said, hey, I'm going to run for governor. What's motivating you to make that move? What's your vision?
Well, first off, I would say, I got the question a few weeks ago. I was down in Bluefield, and I was talking to a woman whose 2 kids are living in Columbus, Ohio, and she said, really, what's kind of what is most important to you as a person, as a West Virginian? I said, running for governor, I can tell you the most important thing is to create a future for our kids and our grandkids. And, the time that we spent in the House, those were a lot of the conversations we had. All the bills that we were looking at, I know that, this doesn't always get the coverage, but we really looked at it through a lens of how are we going to grow West Virginia? How are we going to grow the economy? How are we going to create more opportunities so that, that our kids can stay here? Because you and I have been blessed with great opportunities in this state. We know how great the state is, and we've got good momentum right now. As you know, I'm very proud to be endorsed by Governor Jim Justice. He's been a consequential leader in the state. He's created great momentum, and I know you and I have worked shoulder to shoulder with him to create some of that momentum, and it's time to take it to the next level. So that vision really consists of how do we keep this motivation going in West Virginia? How do we keep the ball rolling and make sure that we're on the right track that we've gotten to? And I think number one, which we often talk about, is creating the safest communities in the country. We have safe communities in most of the parts of West Virginia. But if we can go out there and claim, my goodness, West Virginia has the safest communities in the country, if we can claim that banner, I believe it's not only the moral responsibility of the state to do that and keep people safe, but it's an economic one too. When people look at starting their businesses places or where they want to send their kids to school, they want a safe community. So how do we do that? And you and I worked on this a lot, on the drug issue that we have. How do we make sure that these people that are pushing poison on our streets never see the streets of West Virginia again? And I've said it full stop. I think people that are pushing fentanyl on the streets of West Virginia should go to prison for life. And you and I worked on human traffickers. I think human traffickers need to go to prison for life. These are bad people, and we need them off the streets. So that's number one. We also worked on banning sanctuary cities. We got that done in West Virginia. I was very proud to write that bill and get it across the finish line. Every state in this country is a border state, but not West Virginia anymore because we've got 0 sanctuary cities thanks to the work that we did. Education's huge. You and I worked closely on this with Governor Justice as well on spreading school choice. As a parent of 2 young kids, I can tell you I'm passionate about ensuring that parents are always in charge of their children's education. And so we've spread opportunities in school choice, but at the same time, we've provided our educators with multiple raises in West Virginia to try to make sure that our educators can compete with some of those other states. The biggest part of our A+ for West Virginia plan that we've released, the centerpiece of it is our West Virginia Ready plan. Making sure that every high school student in the state of West Virginia can either go on to the military, go on to college, or have a workable trade skill. And across those 90,000 miles, we have visited our CTEs and our CTCs across this state. We're going to a CTC later on today to visit with some of these kids. And I believe that building those technical trade working skills in our kids are going to be the way that we fill the gap in this workforce. And then the last leg of that stool is continuing on the economic momentum that we've got here in West Virginia. We've got to continue to lower taxes. We've got to continue to pull down regulations so our small businesses can grow. Governor Justice has started that vision. Again, I'm proud to be endorsed by him, and we'll continue that vision.
You know, you brought up some of the things that we've worked on in the legislature, and you and I have worked pretty close on a lot of criminal justice stuff, and one of the things you mentioned with drugs, you know, particularly fentanyl. You know, before I got to the legislature, and you were there a couple years before me, before I got there, you know, if I was in a defense situation, you know, defending a criminal, so to speak, who's been accused of or pleading guilty to delivery of fentanyl, it used to be a 1 to 15, and you know, there's usually a conspiracy involved because there's more than one person. Mm-hmm. You created the drug conspiracy, or had a hand in creating the drug conspiracy charge that increased that based on the amount to upwards of 15 years in prison rather than a 1 to 5, as well as, you know, the doubling of fentanyl, doubling that sentence for a fentanyl crime. I believe you were the one that, you know, brought that bill about, you know, on the agenda there. Several years you've ran the human trafficking, you've ran the you know, the bills that dealt with sexual abuse of children and things like this. So, you know, looking at the race that you're in, I think the interesting thing is a lot of people can say what their position is on something, but you've actually got a voting record on that. And not just a voting record, you were sitting in the driver's seat of whether or not a bill would come to light. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we've heard criticism and stuff like that. It's like, you know, maybe you were moderate or something like that. But if I look back over that, you ran bills on CRT, you ran bills on human trafficking, you ran bills on criminal justice reform. You're the one that originated the bill in committee that ended abortion in West Virginia. That's right. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I mean, and we're very sort of loud about the fact that, you know, as Judiciary Chair, we passed the most conservative agenda in the history of the state of West Virginia. And I was proud to be the chairman of that committee. And as you know, we're a state that's, you know, we're very cultural and value-based, and that's what makes us special. And sometimes people want to argue with that, but as you know, I am full steam ahead in defending West Virginia values. And each time that we put one of those bills on the agenda, whether it was ratcheting up penalties for fentanyl dealers, ratcheting up penalties for human traffickers, whether it was ensuring that West Virginia became a flagship pro-life state, whether it was defending our Second Amendment rights. I mean, you saw it, you were on the committee. Not only did I put those bills on the agenda, but I rewrote them to make them stronger. And I made them more conservative to ensure that we're always protecting West Virginians. And I brought them before that committee, and we passed them. And you saw, I stood on the floor, not only presented them and urged their passage, but defended attacks on those bills to ensure that we protect our way of life right here in West Virginia. You can go back and watch me. And those bills passed bill after bill after bill. And we sent them to the Senate, and the governor signed them. And right now, we have the ability, and you as somebody who participate that and well, to say that we passed the most conservative agenda in the history of the state. You talk about the pro-life you know, credentials that we have, and I'm very proud to be endorsed by West Virginians for Life. And the reason that I'm endorsed for West Virginians for Life is that after the Supreme Court rightfully decided the Dobbs decision, we sprung to action. And as Judiciary Chairman, I was very proud to help write that bill and quickly spring to action so that we, number one, could be one of the most pro-life states in the country, and number two, so we could have a bill that would withstand judicial scrutiny. And we did that, and we've done that, and we don't have elective abortion in the state of West Virginia because of the bill that I put forward. And I'm very, very proud of that. Second Amendment, I don't know how many bills that we worked on gun bills. Look at the anti-commandeering bill. Yeah. What are one of the things that we're worried about here in West Virginia more than anything else? Federal overreach. The Biden administration's out of control, and they'll do anything in their power, especially with their abuse of the administrative state, to try to come into West Virginia and to knock our way of life. And we know that one of those ways they'll try to do that is to try to take our firearms. So we worked on the anti-commandeering, and simply put, we wrote a bill that said the federal government is never going to come into the state of West Virginia, never going to co-opt our law enforcement to come into the homes of West Virginians to try to take their firearms. And we made sure that happened. I was proud to pass that bill, proud to put that bill on the agenda in judiciary, defend it on the floor, and make sure that it's law in West Virginia. So time after time, we have passed conservative pieces of legislation that at one point nobody thought we could get passed in the state of West Virginia. I was proud to lead on that. And that's why I say I'm the get it done conservative in this race. Because I've gotten it done. People simply have to look to see what I've done. We'll continue to get that done as your governor.
You brought up the anti-commandeering bill, and that was something from an academic standpoint was very difficult. You're a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer as well. We tend to look at things through that lens of, will this survive scrutiny? And it was pointed out to me in an interview that I did with CNN that at the same time we were doing anti-commandeering, and you and I worked on that bill together, at the same time, 3 other states were doing a similar bill that the Department of Justice attacked in court, but they left ours alone. Mm-hmm. And the interviewer, the reporter for CNN said, what was the reason that yours, seemed to escape that scrutiny? And I said, I think it was because, we don't act out of emotion, we act out of logic, is the way that I viewed a lot of what we did or have done in the legislature. And having that ability to sit down and construct legislation, with thoughtful people that aren't just acting out of an emotional response to a cry from the public or something of that nature. But, your education and background, and mine as well, led to our laws surviving. And I would say the same thing with abortion. We go back to, the Dobbs decision, and, why did we get thrust into a special session? And I go back to, we had a law on the books that abortion was illegal. And we had actually taken a vote on that through what was called the Criminal Code rewrite, but it was still in there. So you voted at that point in time, and I voted, and everybody in the House voted to keep abortion a crime if Roe versus Wade were ever overturned. Dobbs happens, Roe versus Wade is overturned, and immediately there's a challenge in Kanawha County Circuit Court of our standing abortion law. And at the time, the Attorney General, 3 days before the filing of this suit, the Attorney General, Patrick Morrisey, releases an advisory opinion stating that he doesn't believe that our abortion law on the books would survive scrutiny. And then he goes into court, and of course, the judge in that particular case is like, well, I could quote the advisory opinion from the Attorney General, which thrust us into a special session immediately because, now there was no abortion restriction in West Virginia, after that. Other than the things that you and I had put into place over those couple of years. So, I had a lot of frustration that we're immediately thrust into a special session where it's like, okay, you got 24 hours to figure this out. And you were at the central part of that with some of our staff attorneys. Tell me how you worked through that.
Well, we knew immediately that we had to spring to action. So, we had the advisory opinion that you talked about. That got things all gummed up in the court system. And we weren't simply going to wait on the court system to act. Because you know how long and protracted that sort of can take. And, we had these conversations and we said, we've got to go into special session. We got to act right now. We can't wait on the court because the longer that we wait, something else is going to happen. And so we jumped in and we said, how can we craft a bill to ensure that we make West Virginia that one of those first flagship pro-life state that puts a stake in the ground and says, we're pro-life. We believe in protecting the life of the unborn. We sharpened our pencils like we always do, and we crafted a bill that could withstand judicial scrutiny, and we haven't seen it challenged since. I would talk about the anti-commandeering. The way that we sort of crafted that bill is, we looked straight at the federal government, and we told them, you can't have your cake and eat it too. They said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, look at what's going on in California. You have a state like that that's sitting over there, and they're telling illegal immigrants to come by the millions into this country, and that the federal government can't use local law authority to deport those people in California. Well, I said, well, if you're going to let them do that with illegal immigrants, then we're going to do that to protect our firearms. So they knew that they couldn't come at us because the same liberal, crap, frankly, that they're, applying in California, we basically turned it on them and said we're going to protect our firearms. And then what did we do to assure that we were going to protect against, illegal immigration in the state of West Virginia? We banned sanctuary cities here. And now law enforcement officers in the state of West Virginia that encounter any illegal immigrant on the street of West Virginia are required to report that to ICE so that they're deported immediately. So we've really, taken action and tried to be smart about how we do all of this. And you're exactly right. I have a record and an experience of doing it. You've worked down in the legislature for, a few years. We've worked together for a few years. And really what it's all about, it's about building relationships. You got to be, in order to get something across the finish line, you got to listen, and then you got to build consensus, and you got to do. And I have a clear history of doing that. Again, that's why I'm the get it done conservative in this race, because I've done it before. I've built those relationships. I have those relationships to be able to build the consensus, to be able to bring the right people to the table, and to put results across the finish line that move the needle in West Virginia.
So looking at West Virginia going forward, I look at you as, and probably I'm on the tail end of that, of a 5-year period where Republicans came into power in the West Virginia legislature, in the 2014 election, 2015 through about 2020, up into COVID. We began building the Republican platform into West Virginia law in a way that we hadn't been able to do for 100 years. And you're a big part of that in your different roles in the judiciary, following up with being judiciary chairman, of putting that substantive law into place of the Republican Party platform. And kind of the way that I look at our role going forward is those hard lifts of the Republican Party platform and changing some fundamentals in West Virginia law to make us a more conservative state, to make us more attractive to business, to make us more attractive for people to want to come here for tourism and different reasons, right, and to make us a safe state, as you said before. We've done those big things, and I look at our role now going forward as, and I believe you said, pushing the ball down the floor. I've used the analogy of the Olympic curling. You have the person that pushes the big puck at first, but then you have folks out in front that are sweeping in front of the puck to get it to land in the place that they need it to land. And how do you see your role with that as governor, of keeping that moving in the right direction?
Well, as you know, I'm somebody that grew up playing sports my whole life, and I'm a big believer in team. And, you'll have there's other candidates probably in this race where it's sort of all about them. I don't need any credit. All I want is for good results for West Virginia. I want to improve the people's lives in West Virginia. I want to make sure that we protect our kids in West Virginia, make sure that we have a West Virginia where kids can ultimately have an easier choice of where they want to be. And I know that just doesn't come from one person. That comes from an ability to bring people together. That comes from listening to West Virginians. That comes from working with legislators. That comes from actually bringing people to the table and delivering results. You talk about building a supermajority in West Virginia. In 2020, I was proud to be the person that built the supermajority in the House. I led that effort to build that in the House because we knew that if we wanted to really deliver what we did promise to deliver, the most conservative agenda in the history of the state, we had to have a supermajority of Republicans. And so we delivered that in 2020. As you said, after that I became the Judiciary Chair, and we were able to do a lot of those heavy lift because there's strength in numbers. And that goes back to the team concept. I mean, you got to have a good team in place. We'll always have a good team in place. But I think what's unique about this candidacy is we've built those relationships to start that team. And we will absolutely lean on that team and depend on a team effort to move the ball forward in West Virginia. I hadn't thought of the curling, I hadn't thought of that example yet, but it's a team game, like you said. And now it's time that we've got momentum. We got to take things to the next level. We got to continue to cut taxes. We got to continue to make sure that we're promoting innovation and entrepreneurship, which you know that I'm passionate about. Make sure that our small businesses have opportunities. And I'm glad you hit on tourism. I mean, here in southern West Virginia, can't tell you how much time I've spent talking about tourism. And it's not just bringing people to West Virginia, it's getting the infrastructure assets in place to support people coming into West Virginia, whether it's water and wastewater, whether it's broadband, whether it's getting our streets paved and our bridges fixed. But that's something that we really got to focus on. So we will continue to do that. We will continue to focus on building that workforce. And we've got tremendous momentum right now. And that's the message I think West Virginians want to hear, is one of opportunity and one of the future.
Talking about the economy of southern West Virginia, tourism gets brought up a lot. From a personal standpoint, being here in Beckley, and Beckley is kind of the southern capital of the state, I guess you would say. There's a lot of folks from McDowell, Wyoming, Summers that come to Beckley to do business on a regular basis. Most of them every day make that drive. And when we look at that economy throughout southern West Virginia, you and I voted on, several economic development projects that were primarily in the northern part of the state. And I've said this before, a private business is going to make their investment where they're going to want to make it. They got to make a decision. And a lot of manufacturing facilities and things like this, they're looking for navigable rivers. We don't have one down here. We have a really good interstate highway system. We have, beautiful topography, when it comes to tourism and so forth. But looking forward, if you're elected governor, and of course, we're mainly talking to southern West Virginia right now, I think for the most part. What do you see as an opportunity beyond tourism for southern West Virginia?
Well, I think southern West Virginia has to be a big, big part of West Virginia's success story. Because southern West Virginia really was chapter one or early on in the book of West Virginia. We've powered, this part of the country and the state has powered this country for over a century. When President Obama came in 2008, you and I are about the same age. And most of the people that we went to high school with aren't here anymore.
Right.
And that's because of the Obama administration. He came in and basically said, I'm going to get rid of coal. And what that did, beyond just an attack on one industry, that was an attack on our livelihood. And fast forward right now to what's going on in 2024 with the Biden administration and the new EPA regulations that just came out just last week, that is doing the exact same thing. Now, if you look at it and with a small lens, it just says, oh, there's these new EPA regulations, but it's exactly what Obama did back in the early 2000s by directly attacking West Virginians' way of life. So I'm getting to the question, and here's what I would say. Number one, we aren't going to put up with an administration in Washington that attacks our way of life. We're going to mine more coal in West Virginia. We're going to explore and drill for more gas in West Virginia. We know that the fossil fuel mix in our energy baseload demand is going to be a huge, huge player, and we're going to double down on that in West Virginia to create more energy jobs. Why are we importing coal from China when we can mine it right here in West Virginia? That's a huge part of the frustration for me as well. Why are we letting countries like China come into the state of West Virginia and buy our farmland? Now, I had a bill for that 2 years ago to ban China from buying farmland in the state of West Virginia. We passed it in the House. Hopefully, we can get both houses on board here soon, and I'd love to sign that as governor. But we've got to look at manufacturing opportunities in southern West Virginia. I mean, you go all along throughout, whether you're here in Beckley or you're down in Mercer County. We were down in Princeton the other day looking at a manufacturing facility. There's huge opportunity there, but here's one of the problems. We don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about the wins that we have down here and the quality of the workforce and the people that we have down here enough, because too often we sort of look at it with sort of a narrow lens. And so I think there's great opportunity for manufacturing. As you said, we have good main infrastructure assets when you look at the interstate system. We've got to build some of those, we got to continue to build some of those roads clearly. But, I mean, this is a business community, particularly here in the greater Beckley area. I mean, this is a business community that can not only sustain manufacturing, but can sustain a financial industry when you begin to grow that. And I would break off from the tourism, talk. We do talk about tourism a lot, but one of the things that we really need to focus on as well is our outdoor recreation economy. And people sort of sometimes confuse that with tourism, but when you have people that are coming to West Virginia that like to hunt and that like to mountain bike or rock climb or whatever they like to do, or fish, this is the best place in the country to do it. So why aren't we attracting more of the manufacturing that are making the products that are going into those activities that we love in West Virginia and that are a part of who we are? So the more that we can vertically integrate some of those industries, I think the better. And when we start attracting, ammunition manufacturers, firearm manufacturers, different outdoor recreation manufacturers, they're not only going to come to a place that's open for business, they're going to come to a place that has people that are enthusiastic about working in an industry that they're passionate about. So that's how I see it.
Talking about, fostering new businesses and fostering entrepreneurship, one of the things that you did when you were in the legislature that you actually taught me something was the idea of the sandbox, the regulatory sandbox. And you had several different concepts that actually have become law.
Yes.
The financial regulatory sandbox, and I believe there's a few others. You had a reason for sponsoring that legislation, and what I learned from you from it, because I didn't really understand it at the time, is if we can create a safe space to experiment with a new style of business or a new way of doing business, we could keep a close eye on that and see if this is something that's viable to spread to a larger economy, larger part of West Virginia. Talk to me about that and any other concepts that you might have from a regulatory sandbox standpoint that as governor you would want to grow more of.
Yeah, I think so. The sandbox concept is really, really interesting. And we knew that if we wanted to grow entrepreneurship and innovation in the state of West Virginia, we had to be able to give our innovators, the ability to sort of test and commercialize products. So we said, how can we get folks that want to build business and want to build technologies to come to West Virginia and have them started here? And I looked all over all across the country, and I said, what states are doing, these things well? What states are bringing entrepreneurs in, and why? And the reason why some of them was because they were creating these what we called sandboxes at the time to allow for entrepreneurs to come in and sort of test their product with less regulation, less barriers to entry, so to speak, and then begin to commercialize that product right here in West Virginia with lower cost and lower regulation and more sort of assistance from some of the pieces that we have here in West Virginia, whether that's business coaching or whatever. And we saw that we were the second one to put in the financial services sandbox. We were the only state, we were the only state to have more than one participant in that sandbox. And what they were doing is they're testing out now fintech technology, which, the biggest ones you think about are Rocket Mortgage or Venmo or PayPal, and they're doing it right here in the state of West Virginia. The reason that I really wanted to do that was because the more of these entrepreneurs and innovators that we get into communities, they begin to talk to each other. They begin to build coffee shops. They begin to come together. Their families come together, and then they say, okay, well, I'm done with that idea. Let's build this idea. And you really begin to build an ecosystem where you have really entrepreneurial thinking people right here in West Virginia that can build more businesses. And I mean, you know this as an entrepreneur. Every seed that you plant ain't going to sprout. But I mean, if we can plant enough of them, we'll get a full stand of grass in West Virginia, and I think that's the goal.
Absolutely. And, we look at, large opportunities of bringing in large Nucor, being one is very excited. You and I both voted for that. We're very excited about working on that. One of the things that I come home and I think about, though, is that organic business growth that you talk about. You and I are the same age, and graduated from high school around the same time, went to college, law school, and so to speak. And so many of our friends have left and have not come back. And I've seen some of those friends, go and build an organic business somewhere else. What can we work on here going forward? If you're elected governor, conceivably it would be for, a 4-year term, but generally probably 8, to where you have time to work on things like that. What can we work on to foster and develop that organic business growth that we just haven't, I feel like we're on the cusp of, but we just really haven't got there yet?
Well, I talk about this a lot. We talk about the people that aren't here anymore, and those were sort of a lot of our classmates. But here's the bet I'm willing to make, if I were a betting man, was that if we can create that same environment where you were talking about your buddy in whatever state he's in, he or she's in, I don't know, that built that business organically. If we can level the playing field here in West Virginia and have that same opportunity, I'd be willing to bet, if I were a betting person, that person would build their business in West Virginia. Because we, as lifelong West Virginians, have this sort of tie to West Virginia that, you can't explain. It's sort of in your blood.
It's magnetic.
Yeah, it's infectious, what we have here. It really is. And so we have to create more of those opportunities. But I go back to, how do you do that? I think you do that by, some of the things that I was talking about earlier. We got to have safe communities so people can raise their kids. I mean, my kids are 6 and 8. I want to be in a community that's safe. I want them to be able to, walk to school like I was able to walk to school. I don't want to have to, I drop them, a foot from the door every day. But back when we were in school, we walked to school. You know what I mean? So it's just a different time. So really having safe communities is a big draw for young people because that's where they want to raise their family. Educational opportunities, huge draw for young people. I would venture to guess, and this is based on data I've seen, when people are looking for where they want to go, some of the first questions they ask are, in no particular order, but I bet it's the top 3. What's the compensation structure? Because you're going to, you're going to want to make a living. Is the community safe, and where are my kids going to school? I mean, those are the same questions I'd ask. Those are probably the same questions you'd ask. So if we can check all those boxes, we're certainly, going to begin to level that playing field a lot more. But here's the game changer and the X factor for West Virginia. And I was just at Nucor yesterday with the governor campaigning up there, and we drove through there. I drove through them, and it's amazing. They have 7% completed, and it looks like a small city.
Wow.
Over in Mason County. It's unbelievable. And we need to build more of those. But the game changer for us in West Virginia is what the good Lord has given us. We talk about what's below our feet all the time in our fossil fuels, and that'll continue to power this country. But we don't talk enough about the bounty that's above our feet. I mean, the opportunity that people have to have, a low cost of living, low density housing. You want to live on the mountains. You want to live on the water. You want to work with your hands. You want to work remotely. All of these things are sort of options that we offer to the outside world that other states simply can't compete with. They just can't do it. So if we can, from a regulatory and a tax structure, begin to, get that playing field evened out, we're going to win running away. And the last part of it, I would say, is it's about telling our story. We're lifelong West Virginians. I'm a 6th-generation West Virginian. You know this as well as anybody. You leave this state, the story that people tell about West Virginia ain't the one we know it to be. Right. And I'm about sick and tired of it. Yes. And the governor's done a great job of telling that story. He's begun that narrative. And I'm telling you, we're going to be out there every single day telling our story the way that we know it to be, and it is one heck of a story. And it's a really sticky proposition, not only to the people that are here, but to people that want to come here. And so I'm excited to be able to do that and do it with a new voice and a new generation.
We talked about the social issues, and I think it's interesting to point out in the race is you being of the major candidates in the race. I don't know, there could be a lot more. For all I know, there's 15 candidates in the race, but of what I would call the top five, I would think you're the only person that has a voting record as to the social issues that are the hot button issues for a lot of West Virginians. The other thing that you bring up is taxation, and that's something that you and I sitting here and you being in that race, you're the only person that's voted to, for the first time in 100-year history, reduce income tax in West Virginia. And I've asked several candidates, and I get varying different answers. But I was more interested to ask you because I know a lot of your philosophy, and I've seen your voting record to vote to reduce taxes. We're on a path right now that the House plan had always been, kind of a step-by-step trigger plan to get us to a zero income tax. I've heard other candidates say, turn it all off immediately. And, being in government for 6 years, I don't know how that works. From your standpoint, I know that how you voted before, but what I guess as governor, you're the one that's going to be setting the agenda, kind of like Jim Justice did of, guys, we're going to eliminate income tax and we're going to have a plan to do it. And there was a lot of back and forth. His plan always got us to 50%. And I think that over the next 4 years, we're going to achieve that with the economic growth, the median income growth that we've experienced since you and I have come into office. I think we're going to get to that 50%. How do we get to zero, and how do we do it in a manner that doesn't disrupt government, business, services, or the community at large?
Yeah, so number one, let me just say, that record and being to get it done conservative in this race is why I have an A rating with the NRA. It's why I've been endorsed by West Virginians for Life. It's why the deputy sheriffs all across the state of West Virginia have endorsed me. It's why the FOP, in Wood County has endorsed me. It's because I have a record of delivering results that have moved the needle in West Virginia. You talk about taxation. We know that one of the most critical things that we can do is eliminate the personal income tax in West Virginia. I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually lowered taxes. And I was very proud to, that we were able to give back $750 million to the hardworking people of West Virginia. We have triggers in place to do that, as you said, to get it down at least to 50. But I can tell you that we will work every day to accelerate the elimination completely of the personal income tax. And here's why I believe that we can do it at a faster clip than I think some people think. Because if you look back to when we made that huge tax cut, that monumental historic tax cut in the state of West Virginia, we did it at the same time that we raised teacher pay. We did it at the same time that we did other economic development. And what did we see after that happened? We saw our economy grow. So we know that we can cut taxes, and we can, take care of our teachers and take care of our law enforcement officers and provide them with the tools that they need and still have an economy that grows. So as your governor, we will continue to do that. But here's the difference. You know what it's like to govern. I know what it's like to govern. You have to be able to govern. You have to know how the playbook works, and I've shown and demonstrated an ability to make the right investments in our people and also lower taxes all across the state of West Virginia. And so we'll do it again, and we'll continue to do it until we ensure that our taxes, our personal income tax in the state of West Virginia is completely gone.
But that's fantastic. I guess the last thing that I would ask you, we're 15 days out. I mean, as a political candidate, I've been for years. 15.
Who's counting?
I'm counting. I'm always counting. But 15 days out. You only have a little bit of time left to talk directly to that voter. What's the end cap to this thing that you started a year and a half ago with your campaign? What is the end cap? What's the final message to that voter?
You know, we've been at this for 16, 17 months now. And people often ask, they said, you know, why are you doing this so early and so far out? Because the reason is we wanted to take every single opportunity that we could to listen to as many West Virginians as we could. People want to be heard. And I'm a firm believer that the answers to the challenges that we face in West Virginia are with the people and in the communities. And every single day of this campaign, for the last 16 or 17 months, we have been in the communities and with the people, listening to what's going on in their churches, listening to what's going on in their schools, asking what's going on at the soccer games or, you know, the basketball games or the football games, at the pickup lines, kitchen table stuff. I mean, I got 2 young kids. You got kids. We go through some of the same issues. And that's how we develop, you know, the solutions for tomorrow. How do we combat the reckless spending and, you know, Biden inflation that's going on in this country? How do we create more jobs and opportunity for our kids to make sure that they stay here? How do we ensure that our workforce training is always continuing to keep up with the needs that our economy is demanding? How do we make sure that we're providing educational options for our kids that allow them to succeed, providing more pathways, not narrower ones that are built in some cookie cutter fashion? So your question is, how do you finish? You finish exactly the same way that we've been doing it every single day. That's on the road every single day. That's with West Virginians. That's in the communities. That's listening to people and finding out what's going on in their lives. And we will continue that momentum every single day until we're through this. We'll do it on until November. The one thing that you always look for is you know, rhythmic growth. And this campaign has rhythmically grown, and over the past 3 or 4 weeks, it's surged. And we're not looking back, and we're going to continue that way all the way through the tape.
It sounds fantastic. Moore,
Thanks
for being here with me
Appreciate
this morning.
It. Yeah.
Here with gubernatorial candidate Moore Capito. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Lootpress. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.